Hi everyone, it's Lynn Dion from Pink Whisper Designs. Today I've got a really fun card for you. I'll talk about the inspiration for this card a little bit further on in the video, but for right now we're going to be using this little red truck from Art Impressions and some really pretty Nordic dies from the Tim Holtz collection. So let's go ahead and get started. The stamp set we're going to be using is this little trucks set from Art Impressions, and this is part of their watercolor series, and you get 2 little trucks in this set. And then for paper, I'm using the Spectrum Noir Ultra Smooth Premium White cardstock, and this is designed especially for alcohol-based markers. And I've got the Finesse Spectrum Noir Alcohol Proof Dye Ink, and this is the Noir Black, so it's a nice jet black. I've placed that paper in my mini Misty stamp positioner. I'll stamp this a couple of times, and then we can go ahead and flip this around. I'm making 2 cards today. I won't show you all of that in this process, but I am going to complete 2 cards today. So I've gone ahead and stamped a second one. To do our coloring, we're going to be using the dark red shades and the dark red blends. The blends would be the lighter tones. It's DR1, dark red 1, 3, and 4. And then for the darker series, it's 5, 6, and 7. So you get a nice variety of this color to do your blending. And one end of the pen is the lightest color. The middle section there is the medium tone. And the right-hand side is the darkest tone. So again, the tri-blend marker has all 3 colors on one pen. So I'm going to start off with these lighter colors, so that would be DR1, and I'm going to just lay that down. I'm going to do the truck in little sections, just so I have plenty of time to blend this out. Then I'll go to that medium tone, which is the DR3, and then I'll flip that pen around and grab the darker one, which is the DR4. Now I'm also going to go to the other pen and grab one of those darker colors. And I'm going to grab that middle one, so that would be DR6. So I'm just going to keep doing this, and you can keep adding layers of color and blending this out. And again, this takes any of the guesswork out of what colors blend together. These are already done for you. It's really simple and easy to do. So I decided to do this little red truck. I was over my son's house a couple weeks ago, or last week I guess, and he said, "Mom, did you know these little red trucks are trending on I guess it would be Instagram?" And he said, everybody's, posting little videos and things about these little red trucks. He said, "Have you ever done a card with these?" And I said, I've been meaning to do a card with this little truck that I have from Art Impressions. It's this set is one of the brand new sets in their series. So I thought this would be really fun to put a card together, and I'll give this one to him for Christmas, obviously, and I think he'll get a kick out of it. So that's kind of what my inspiration was for this particular card. And again, I'm just going to keep doing this in smaller sections. I'll just color the one in on camera so you can see what that looks like, and then I'll color that second one in off camera. Now, usually I use my Zig watercolor markers, so when you're using your alcohol-based markers, and I know probably many of you already know this, I don't do a lot with the alcohol-based markers, but you need a special paper and a special ink pad to do this kind of blending with the alcohol. As always, I will list and link all the products I'm using today on my blog and down below the video. So if you want to check that out, it's easily available. So for the tires, let's start with the ice gray shades. That would be the darker series of the ice gray. We will also be using the blends here in a second as well. But to keep the tires on the darker side, I didn't want to use black because I wanted to get some highlights. So I used the shades, and now I'm going to the ice gray blend, which is the lighter tones, to do the bumper, the little mirror, and then the little hubcaps on the wheels. So I'll quickly color those in, just adding a little bit of a darker shade down towards the bottom of the hubcap. And then let's switch to the Ice Blue blend. Again, this would be the lighter series in the Ice Blue. And I'm going to just tint those windows just a little tiny bit. I'm just using the lightest color, and then I'm using my regular Spectrum Noir blender pen just to move that ink around a little bit, just to soften those edges just a little bit. That'll give it a little bit the look of a reflection. Now with my detail scissors, I'm going to cut this out, and I'm going to follow right along the lines, and there you can see those two are completed and colored in. Now this next little set has a little Volkswagen Bug, a little like woody station wagon, I guess it would be, and then it's got some packages for the top of the car, and it's also got this little Christmas tree. So we're going to grab that little Christmas tree today. We'll be placing that in the back of our little pickup truck. I'm going to stamp a couple of these. Now I've switched over to my Bristol Smooth cardstock because we're going to be using some water-based dye inks. I've got 3 little dye inks from the Tim Holtz collection. And those would be Twisted Citron, Crushed Olive, and Rustic Wilderness. So I started with the Twisted Citron. Now, just using the side of the ink pad, just that edge, I'm going to do kind of down the center and a little bit out towards the edges with that crushed olive. And then with the Rustic Wilderness, I'll stick to the very down the center and then a little bit at the bottom of the tree. And that'll give us a nice variety of color. And then I can go back to the Twisted Citron and just stamp that one last time, just to blend everything together. So you can see, again, a nice variation of color by doing that. I'll stamp that second one. And then with my detail scissors, I'm going to cut this out. I will leave a little white border all the way around. Not too much. I'm trying to kind of cut along the lines of the tree, but I don't want to have to worry too much. So the next thing we're going to do is grab the Sizzix Thinlits die set from Tim Holtz. And this is just so pretty. You get all of these really pretty Nordic pieces. It is called the Sizzix Thinlits Funky Nordic set. And it's just so cute. We're going to use this little barn. And then we're also going to use those little mountains with the snow caps. And that die cuts all in one piece. And by the way, I'm using my Sizzix Sidekick machine to do the die cutting. Now let's go ahead and add a little bit of shading to each side of these mountains. So I've got the Hickory Smoke Distress Oxide ink, again from Tim Holtz. And I'm going to add it down the right side of each of those little mountains and a little bit on the snow as well. I'm also going to use that for the roof on the barn. So I'm coming up from the bottom of the roof up towards the top. And then let's switch colors to the Antique Linen Distress Oxide ink and do the barn itself and the side of the barn. I'll try to place that pretty much all over the areas that are going to show. And then we'll add a little bit of shadowing to this using the gathered twigs. So this is a really easy way to color these in. You could absolutely grab your Copic markers and do some coloring with this. But I thought this was really easy to do, and you get some really nice shading and blending. So I'm just going back to that lighter color to blend that out a little bit. And I'm just checking here to see if I have enough shadows. And now we can go ahead and do that second one. Now with the barn door, I'll do the little doors. I'm using a small blending brush for that. And then we'll add a little bit of that gathered twigs to each side of the door. Again, just to give it a little bit more of a rustic look. So now let's go ahead and glue these little barns together. I'm going to add that roof and then the side of the barn. And there are little score lines on these dies. So it's right on the paper after you die cut it, so you know exactly where to place these. There's little markings there as to where the door goes. and where the roof and the side go. So it's really simple to put this back together. Now for the little snow-capped mountains, I'm going to go ahead and glue on that snow right at the very top. Now each card will have 3 of these, so I die cut 6 in total. And now let's add a little sparkle to the snowy area. So I'm using my Wink of Stella clear glitter pen. I'll add it to all of those little snow caps and to the snow on the roof of the barns. Now look at this cute little wreath. This is from the watercolor mini wreath set from Art Impressions. This is also part of the newer series. And this little wreath is just adorable and perfect for our barn. We're going to place it up on the front of the barn. I'm removing that little foam pad because these are the thick rubber stamps. So I want to make sure I have enough room to do my stamping. And we'll go ahead and go back to those same 3 colors and we'll use them in the same order we did before. I'm inking up the little wreath entirely with twisted citron, and then I'll go ahead and add that second color, and I'm just tapping it on here or there. I'm using the edge of the ink pad and I'm not completely covering everything. I'm just tapping a little bit of that color on here and there. And I'll do the same thing with the Rustic Wilderness. So I'm just adding a few little dark spots on that wreath. You can go back and add some more. So here's what that looks like completed, and isn't that so cute? We'll do the same thing for this second barn. And then I'm grabbing my Signo gold gel pen, and I'm going to add a little bow at the top of the wreath, and I'm just drawing that in by hand, and that'll give us a little sparkle. And then I'll add a little doorknob to each of those doors. Now I've got the Doc P.H. Martin's bleed proof white ink. I'm going to kind of just paint on a little bit of that white snow. And I'm using a number 0 brush, so it's a little tiny brush. And I'm just kind of patting it on. I'm just kind of dabbing it on, just filling in some little areas with that snow. And then we're going to do the same thing for these trees that are going to be on the back of our truck. So we want it to look like they've been kind of like sitting in the snow for a little while, and we're bringing this little tree back home. And so I'm just going to dab it on, and I'm not being fussy here. I'm just adding some little dabs of that white. And then let's also do the same thing for the little trucks. We'll add some snow to each of these little fenders. We'll add a little bit to the top on the roof of the truck. And again, I'm just kind of using an up and down tapping motion just to kind of apply that. You can let that sit and dry just a little bit and then come back in with some more ink. So I'm just going to let that dry for a second or two. I'll do the top. And then I'm adding a little bit right along the bottom of the door and along that running board. And then I'll come back in and add a little bit more to those fenders. So this is really easy. And a little bit on the bed of the truck there. So once that's done, let's take the white gel pen and add a few little highlights on those hubcaps. And now we can set all of these aside. So we've got everything ready to go. All of our little snow-capped mountains are ready. Let's build the card base. This measures 4 1/4 by 11 inches. And I'm scoring it at 5 1/2 inches. So these will be standard top folding A2 size cards. So the total measurement will be 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. Now we can go ahead, and we've got 2 panels at 5 1/4 by 4 inches. That'll be for the front of the card. That'll leave a little bit of that craft border all the way around the edges. So I've got the Speckled Egg Distress Oxide ink, and I'm going to apply that. Now our snowy borders are going to come up quite a way on this little panel, so I don't need to do the entire panel. I'm just doing maybe about 3/4 of it. And then I've got the Uncharted Mariner, And we're going to darken it up down towards the bottom. So it'll get lighter as we go up to the top of the sky. We'll give that a nice blend, and then we can come back in with that lighter color and blend that out completely. Now I've got 4 little panels here, and I've got a lightweight cardstock. I'm using a 65-pound weight cardstock because we're going to have a lot of layers. So that first layer, that will measure 3.5 inches by 4 inches. These are for our snowy borders. Then we've got 2.25 inches by 4 inches, 1.5 inches by 4 inches, and 1 inch. So again, I have 2 sets of these, and all we're going to do is tear across the top. And I like to tear in 2 different directions. That gives me that nice ruffled edge at the top, and it'll give that snow a little bit more of a realistic look. So just go back and forth towards you and away from you and tear all 4 of those pieces. Once we have that done, we can start by adding these panels to the front of the card. I'm using the Nuvo Deluxe adhesive, and that will give me a little time to slide these around and make sure they're lined up nice and straight. And then we can go ahead, and I'm just checking here to make sure that the height of this snowy border is where I want it to be. This is where you can do some adjusting to those borders if you need to. Just trying to lay everything out to see exactly what I want here. And now that looks pretty good, so I'm going to go ahead and glue down those snow-capped mountains. And I'm just going to put this one just a little bit lower than the other 2, just for a little bit of variety. Now we can glue on this largest snowy border. And again, I use that lighter weight cardstock because we are stacking up 4 of these layers, and I don't want the front of the card to get too thick. If I use that 100-pound cardstock, I just feel like it would just be too much. If you're going to use a heavier weight cardstock, you may want to not do as many of the snowy layers. You may just want to do 2. But I wanted the 4, so let's go ahead. We glued down the little barn, and now I'm just going to glue that little tree onto the truck. And we can glue down this next border. And then that truck's going to go in between these 2 snowy borders. So just kind of going to pretend that there's a road in between there, but there's so much snow you can't see the road. So that was my thought process on that. So let's go ahead and glue this down off to the left-hand side. We are going to have a sentiment off to the right, so I want to leave enough room for that. And I'm just lining everything up down at the bottom. Now I'm going back to that Doc PH Martin white bleed-proof ink, placing a little bit on my glass media mat. I'm spritzing it with a little bit of water from my Distress sprayer. Again, I've got that little tiny number 0 brush, and I'm going to spatter both of these cards. And that'll really bring everything together. That gives this beautiful snowy look. It'll add some snow to the side of our little barn and to the front of the little trucks as well. Now I've got the Chubby Snowman set from Art Impressions, and I'm grabbing that sentiment that says Winter Wonderland. And it's kind of got a thick sentiment for the winter, so it's going to stand out very nicely. I'm using some of the Tim Holtz Barn Door Archival ink. Again, this is a permanent ink, and I'm going to stamp that onto some of that craft cardstock. I'll grab a rectangle die from the Art Impressions Nested Rectangle Die set that will fit perfectly on our sentiment. And I'll tape that down with a little bit of Post-it tape, and then we can run that through the Sizzix Sidekick machine. Now let's add a little bit of ink around the edges using, again, that gathered twigs that we used earlier. I'm just using a small blending brush to do that. And then I do want to pop these sentiments up. So I'm going to grab some Scotch foam tape and I'm going to place it right along the back of this. And that'll pop this up nicely. Give us a little bit of dimension for the sentiment. So I went ahead and attached those to the front of the card. Now I've got my Tombow pen. This is just a dark red pen. This is number 847, and I'm using the little detail tip, not the brush tip, but the other end, and I'm just going to put some little berries on those wreaths. Then I've got some red and white baker's twine. I'm going to wrap that around a couple of times, and we'll tie a bow at the top of these cards. I'm going to use my reverse tweezers just to clamp that down. I'm centering that bow, and I'll just tie that. Using those tweezers kind of holds it while I'm tying that bow. So I'm just going to play around with that a little bit, then I'll snip away any excess. And I did the same thing for this second card. So let's take a quick look at the finished card. And you can see those pretty snow-capped mountains. We've got that Wink of Stella clear glitter on there and that beautiful wreath on the barn and this little red truck. So I really hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please hit the like button and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so that you don't miss a single video. Thanks so much for joining me today. I really do appreciate it. And I hope you all have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.